welcome to the conference. My name is Bunmi. I'm currently the customer engineering manager here at Google Cloud. I also work with our Black Googler network as a partnerships lead, which I will speak more about later on. Just going to give a real quick talk about careers. I'll talk a little bit about what it is, how it is to work at Google, the kind of things we do in my team in particular. And then at the end of the talk, I will hang around if anybody has any questions or just wants to chat. So just a little bit about myself to start with. So my education started in Nigeria. So I did my first degree in university in Nigeria, electronic engineering. And then I came over to the UK to do a master's degree in microelectronics and telecoms. And I'm actually currently a student. So I started an MBA last year during the pandemic, and I'm hoping to graduate from Warwick Business School at some point in 2023. So exciting times. So I manage a team of sales engineers, and I wanted to just give you an idea of what a typical day in the life of a sales engineer is. So sales engineers are quite different from the usual techies or engineers in that a sales engineer belongs in two camps effectively. You're a member of the sales team, but you collaborate a lot with the engineers who build the products. And your job is to actually help customers to determine what they want, assess their needs, and then position your products to those customers. And as a result, you need to be quite adept at evaluating what your customer's unique situation is, identifying what their pain points are, and then working with the sales team as the technical know-how on that team in order to close a sale. So as you can see here, lots of different activities, including customer presentations, demonstrations. You need to keep up to speed with the market by doing lots of research. Public speaking is a big part of the job as well. And then but it involves a lot of learning from the engineering teams and then working with the sales teams in order to execute sales. So it's a great job, and at the heart of it, it's similar to what a lot of us here at Google do, which is using technology to solve practical problems. The difference in sales engineer role is that you're actually helping businesses solve their challenges with technology. And in order to do that, you need a really good understanding of both the technology side and the business side. So if any of you are interested in sales engineering roles, just come and have a chat. What do I love about working at Google? I love the fact that I work with very smart people every single day. I love the fact that I get to see some products really up close that will one day change the world. Um, I love doing 20% projects, and I'll talk more about that in a second. And right now, I'm doing one with the Black Googler Network, which I mentioned at the top of this. And then prior to the pandemic, we used to travel quite a lot. That no longer happens, obviously. But being able to work in an international job is a really, really great perk for me. So Google is quite committed to your future as an organization. So there's lots of opportunities for self-development. I talked about the 20% roles. Some people use that to learn a technology that they haven't worked with in the past. So you get a 20% role on a team, and that helps you to build up experience in an area that is maybe not in your core work. I used mine to help to lead our Black Googler network in the partnership space. So I'm looking at how can we partner with both internal and external organizations for the benefit of all the Black Googlers in the organization. And then finally, Google really, really encourages internal mobility, and I'll show you that in a second. What's one of the good things about working in a bigger company is that you can constantly move around depending on your career goals and your interests. So this is my career path to date. So what I've tried to highlight here is the different pivots I've taken in my career. So the title of this topic is that the career ladder is dead, and this is just an illustration of what a career looks like nowadays. So when I moved back to the UK after my masters, the first job I got was help desk, which wasn't ideal. It was a little bit, I don't want to say beneath but I was very overqualified for the job, but it was the only job I could get. Fortunately, it was a small organization and I was able to pivot. And by the time I left, my replacement's job title was infrastructure lead. So just to show you how my roles changed in the 1.5 years I was there. I then went into technical support, working for a software company called CA. And then after that, I pivoted again to professional services, which is when I became a technical consultant. And that was on my journey to becoming a sales engineer. So, sales engineer, I did that for a couple of other organizations before I eventually got to Google. Now, since I've been at Google, I've actually held a number of different roles as well. So, as a customer engineer or a sales engineer, I started in the ad tech space or advertising technology. I then moved to advertising agencies, which is kind of adjacent. After that, I actually left the sales organization and went into our marketing team as a competitive intelligence analyst. So I was helping our sales team to gather information on our competition and helping them to frame their messaging when they are in a competitive situation in the sale. And then I came back to sales this year as a manager, and I'm now running the sales engineering team for our retail space. So again, you can see here, even within Google, I've pivoted to quite a few different number of roles. And that's indicative of careers in 2021. So in the past, so I'll give you an example. My father worked for the same organization for 26 years, started at the bottom, rose to manager, senior manager, director, went all the way to top. And that's how careers used to be. That's no longer true. Especially in a technical career, our careers are now similar to what you see on the right, where you could go straight, you could come off, venture off in another direction, and you will probably need to change direction, go backwards sometimes, go forward sometimes. But it's now, some people likened it to a jungle gym, where rather than just going all the way up, you go sideways. Sometimes you have to go down to go up. But careers have changed, and we have to change in order to maximize careers in 2021. So we have to actually approach our jobs in a completely different way. So, what are the useful skills to have? The ability to learn and unlearn is number one. And what do I mean by that? So, I work in cloud computing at the moment. That didn't exist 10 years ago. 10 years ago, if you'd asked me what I wanted to do, I would not have been able to say cloud computing because it was not even an industry. And that has happened to me in my career multiple times where the technology I'm working on is brand new, less than 5 years old. So, how do you prepare for that? Well, you have to be prepared to be learning something new all the time. As you can see, I'm doing an MBA at the moment as well. So, that's the mindset you have to have, is be prepared to learn at all times. Then the next bit is you need to be very comfortable with being uncomfortable. What does that mean? You need to remain motivated all the time. When you find yourself in a position where you know your job inside out and you're incredibly comfortable, at that time, it's actually time to try something different. You can't just sit there and continue to do what you've always done. It's not going to work. You need to actually be prepared to move once you start getting comfortable. Focus on possibilities versus plans. So, just like I said, um, I couldn't have planned my career to date because the technology I'm working on now didn't exist 10 years ago. You need to be looking at, rather than having a concrete plan that you want to follow, you need to actually prepare possibilities and think, which areas do I want to go down? And then finally, leadership. Be prepared to take on new challenges and grow your ownership of critical projects. That's the only way you're going to progress, is being able to step up whenever the opportunity presents itself. Now, what can you do in order to prepare yourself again for this? The first thing you need to do is know yourself inside out. What are your values? Because those values, you should try to the best of your ability to match that with the organizations you want to work for. But it goes a bit beyond that. So there are lots of tests around, like Clifton Strengths, the disc profile, learning about what motivates you, how you work. Those kind of skills are really, really important, because once you can understand yourself and to an extent understand the people around you, it will help you to actually decide on what best to pursue as your possibilities you should go after. We have a program here at Google called I Am Remarkable, and the one takeaway I took from that was so the program was designed for women, but they've extended it to ethnic minorities because they found that for both those groups, we don't talk about our achievements enough. And part of that program was they got us to write down our achievements and then say in front of the room, talk about that achievement to the whole room. It's so uncomfortable for me anyway. It was really uncomfortable for all of us to do that. But you need to learn to do that because that's how you progress. People need to know what you've done, they need to know your abilities. And the only way they will know, believe it or not, you can't just doing a good job is not enough. You need to talk about it or get other people to talk about it on your behalf. And that's where we come to networking. So obviously you guys are here, you understand the value of networking. The advice I will give you is there are two pieces of advice. First of all, connect to people before you need them. You don't just walk up to somebody when you need something from them. And secondly, give, don't just take. And that's quite important. Lots of people approach networking looking for what they can get out of it. Approach networking by looking at what you can give people, and don't assume that because you're entry level or because you don't know a lot of people, you can't give anything. That's not true. You have something people want, even if it's a very, very senior person in another organization. There is something you can do, there is something you can offer that they want. So just be a bit creative, think about it, and approach networking from a giving standpoint. And then career plans, I talked about how you should don't just focus on planning but possibilities. But you need to own that. Nobody's going to own that for you. You need to be able to decide, what do I want to do, what do I enjoy, and what next. And then finally, stay curious. So constantly ask questions. The most curious people are the best problem solvers and the top performers. Random acts of curiosity should become part of your day-to-day work. Ask questions all the time. Ask people what they're thinking about, ask people what they're working on, meet new people. But again, that is a key part of how you will continue to progress in your career. And then finally, I'm going to end this with two book recommendations. So I love to read. Two books that I would say have helped my career the most to date. The first one, So Good They Can't Ignore You. So there's this paradigm that follow your passion, and that's what you should go and do. So if you're passionate about tap dancing, go and find a job in tap dancing. What Carl Newport argues is that that advice is very, very flawed. Don't follow your passions, follow your skills. Follow your skills. And how do you develop skills? You develop skills from experience. So whatever you are doing now, whatever work you're doing, whatever work you get, that is actually become passionate about that rather than the other way around. It's a great book. It's a different approach to focusing on how to build your strengths, but I strongly recommend it. And then the book on the right, The Squiggly Career, similar to what I just said about how the career ladder is dead. So they talk about that in a lot more detail, and how right now you need to just discover opportunity and design your own career around this whole concept of the squiggly career. I don't have a name for it. I think I like the Jungle Gym name. Squiggly career is also a very good description of careers nowadays. And that's the end of my presentation. So I'm just going to leave you here with some resources from Google. The Build Your Future site has a ton of information on the roles, programs, events, and resources for students. The Tech Development Guide is an excellent resource for interview and resume prep with skill development. Google students on Instagram and Twitter, lots of advice there. We have coding competitions that might be useful to you. Scholarships as well. If you're a computer science student and you're looking at furthering your education, to see what Google has. And then last but not least, we have a diversity annual report, which talks about some things. Every year we release this, and it talks about what we've discovered and actions we're taking to make our workplace more equitable for everyone and to make the world in general more equitable. So that's the end of my presentation. I hope that was useful to someone. And it seems we have one question so far. What's the question? I'll give you a great example about giving. So a friend of mine, he eventually became CEO of an organization. And on the day he went for his interview, he was interviewing with his uncle. And you would think that he would just rock up knowing that it was his uncle interviewing him and there was nothing he could be. But he bought his uncle a small gift. He bought his uncle a gift. I can't remember what it was now, but his uncle was like, of everyone who's asked me for work, you're the only person who's brought something for me. And I mean, he probably was going to get the job anyway, but what he did differentiated him from the entire group of people that interviewed that day, because he was the only person that came with something. And that's the thing, when I say giving, it's quite if you do it, you will stand out from the crowd. And if you stand out from the crowd, people will remember you, and that will help you. I'll give you another example. There was an exec I work with who one of the younger members of her team came to her and asked for something. But she came and she said, I noticed that you're really struggling with your social media. I think she had an Instagram profile, but she never used to post anything. And she offered to coach this exec on how to use social media. And that was huge. The exec, it was something that she'd been thinking about, but would just never have done on her own. And the relationship between the two of them over time grew. She helped that other person to become more successful at work, gave her a lot of mentoring and coaching. And all she got, I mean, she got what she got in return was that social media coaching. So it's things like it sounds small, it sounds my, but there is something you have that they don't, there's a problem they have to solve that you can help with. You just need to observe and maybe even ask, because in the end, um, you will be the only person that's asking that question. You will be the only person that's offering something. Even if they say no, the fact that you've offered something makes you a lot more memorable. How do I plan for my career? That's a good question. So again, it's there's um there's this saying of if opportunity doesn't opportunity knocks but once, but there's something I always tell people that if opportunity doesn't knock, build a door. In terms of my career, just like I said, I'm constantly looking for what's coming up next. So at the moment, I have decided that I want to move somewhere in management, which is why I started the MBA long before I got the management job. So again, it's me trying to do things before I actually, so trying to prepare for stuff before I do it. And again, it's it's rather than coming up with, oh, this is what I want to do. I always suggest have two or three options of what you want to do. Another piece of advice I can give you is go on any job sites and look for your dream job. Look for the description for your dream job. So maybe you want to be a product manager, marketing manager, um, whatever your dream job is. Look at the description and look at the requirements and measure yourself against that and say, what's missing? What don't I have that? And if you've got everything, then that's not your dream job. You need to aim higher. But look at your dream job and look at the requirements for that job, measure yourself against it, and then figure out what do I need to do to close the gap. And again, if you've got three or four of them, because you shouldn't just have one possibility, have three or four possibilities, there will be some common threads across all of them. And there'll be one or two that will be unique to different. And again, just spend time closing the gap over months, maybe even years sometimes. But spend time learning the technical skills required for that job, or the non-technical skills even, or maybe even making connections with people who are doing that job at the moment and ask for their advice. What do I need to do in order to apply for this role? But it's a lot of preparation. But you can't be fixed on I want to be this, I want to be that. You need to have a number of possibilities because things change so quickly nowadays. You just need to be that constant, you need to be in constant learning mode, because that's the only way you'll be, because when the opportunity does come, you need to be ready before it shows up, not after. So in order to do that, lots of planning is required. The links to resources are in the presentation, which I will I'm trying to see the best way to share it. Yeah, Emily should have shared it. If she hasn't shared it, I will send you the presentation once I'm done. But they're all there. It's on the screen now anyway. So the yeah, all the links are on the screen now. How do you handle rejection? That's a very good question, actually. Um, One thing I will say is rejections happen more than you hear no more than you hear yes. And working in sales, you hear no a lot more than hear yes. You can't allow it to. It's easier said than done, but you can't allow it to affect you. uh, um, I would always approach it from a learning perspective. So if I get a rejection for a job, I will ask them why. Ask for feedback and say, what could I have done better? Was it my background? Was it my interviewing skills? One thing I would say about interviews is if you've been called for an interview, you can probably do that job. it's just a case of maybe somebody who interviewed was a stronger candidate. So take heart from the fact that you're getting an interview at all shows that you can probably do the job anyway. But once you're in the pipeline, there's other people there, and again, it just becomes your turn will come. Is one way I would always say. But how do I not let it affect me? I use each opportunity as a learning process. Why was I not successful? Was it my interviewing skills? Was it my background? And if it was my background, what in my background was it, or what skills were missing for that particular job? And then see if it's something I can work on. But I would use each rejection as a learning opportunity. Um, it is easier said than done, and sometimes when you're getting multiple rejections in a day, it can be really really hard, especially when you're just starting out. I still remember when I finished my masters and I was applying for jobs, and I was back then we used to write letters, not just emails, and I would get mountains of rejection letters every day. It was really really hard, but I was lucky enough to get a few interviews, and I ended up not getting a job. I had to go back to Nigeria to work for a bit before I came back to the UK. It was hard. It was hard, and I'm not going to pretend as if I just brushed it off. I didn't. Um, but you just have to approach it from a learning perspective and see where you are successful, even if it's just a little bit of success. Why were you successful? And where you got rejected, try and understand why, and then use that to improve yourself. So there's a question there. On average, how many hours a week do you dedicate to learning and developing? That's a good question. So I try and do. So the fact that I'm studying for an MBA at the moment kind of skews that significantly, because it's an executive MBA part time, and I'm doing 15 hours a week just to keep up. That's way too much if you're working full time, but it's just something I'm doing for a few years while I want to get this degree. My advice to my team is they do 3 or 4 hours a week. So try and do an hour a day. Um, Whenever people send me all these long YouTube videos, I always tell them that's time I would prefer to use to do something. Just 45 minutes at the end of every day, sit down and read something. 45 minutes at the end of every day, watch an educational video. That's pretty much what you need. And then from time to time, you're searching, you're preparing. But yeah, I would argue that you don't need more than that. 3 or 4 hours a week. Are LinkedIn courses respected in job market? I don't think any courses are respected. The, the answer I will give you is nobody cares which courses you've done or what degrees you have to an extent. They care what you can do. Um, so again, approach the courses to learn stuff, but you need to be prepared to demonstrate that you know it versus, oh, I've got this certificate or I've got this degree. You need to be prepared to show when you approach any organization looking for work, what can you do for them versus this is all I have. These are all my qualifications, or this is all the stuff I've got. Approach it from don't I wouldn't look at, oh, LinkedIn courses, are they respected or not? I would look more at, have you learned what the course was teaching? And are you able to bring that to the table in a discussion? Can you talk intelligently about it, even if you don't have the experience? Can you talk intelligently enough about it in an interview? Are there any tech recruiters you would suggest? Um, that's it. I don't have any I would suggest per se. A lot of the larger companies recruit directly. So Google, for example, does not use recruiters. Um, what I have found in my career, and don't this is this don't quote me on this. I've never actually used a specific recruiter. I've searched for jobs, applied for them, and then the recruiter handling that job will approach me, and then we would go through the interview process. Or the recruiter has seen my CV on job sites or job server, wherever I've put it, and then reach out to me with opportunities. But I've never actually gone with particular recruiters per se. I've been lucky enough where, for the most part, the larger companies tend to recruit directly, and I've applied directly. So I know that's what happened at Google, and that's definitely what happened at Dell. I'm an ex-technician going into UI design, but no experience. Been creating designs. So when you say you've been creating designs, um, Design is, do you have a online portfolio you can put on your CV? So showing the work you've done. If it's design work, it's something that, as long as it's not confidential, it's maybe a link to your online portfolio showing people the work you've done in UI design, or adequately describing. When you say you've been creating designs, is creating designs for who? One, two. Especially for technical roles, a lot of people talk about what they've done. What I would suggest is maybe pivot and talk about the impact of what you've done. So you created a UI design for your friend's business, for example, but that drove 20% more business or something along those lines. So talk about the impact, the business impact. And I know I'm coming from a sales background, and maybe that's skewing my conversation a bit. But rather than just talking about what you've done, talk about the impact of that, and that should catch people's attention if it's that you don't have experience. So even if you've done it pro bono for a friend or for charity, you should be able to describe why they engaged with you and what the impact of what that of your work was. That's all the questions. Okay, thank you very much.